So glad you could join us for another episode of Game.Set.Chat at a distance. I'm Chanda,
I'm Zena.
and it's going to be a fun show today. We have had a lot of fun so far. I don't want to give it all away, but Zena, we've had a number of things kind of happening this week. So I want to kind of touch on that because people have been watching us, enjoying our shows. A big part of it is kind of, getting away from the heaviness of
Yeah.
being at home, not being able to interact, having this connection. We've had a lot of craziness going on this week. And so I just want to say right off the bat, thoughts are with so many of the families who have lost loved ones, and also for all of the injustices that are going on right now. We hope that people can find peace through all this, and we can keep moving forward and moving things along the way we've been trying to do here week to week.
Yeah, it really has been just one of those weeks where you really it's been unbelievable. But, I still have hope, and I'm still praying that, in the midst of all this, that we will come together and understand that, we are really one race and we're not separate.
Yeah. And I mean, we literally are in this together. I mean, from, all of us here in each state in the US and all over the world. So we're all trying to get through it. And this is certainly one of the ways that we're trying to do that, sort of bring some enjoyment, some fun, some laughter. And, the guest that we have on today is certainly going to bring some fun and laughter. He is one of my favorite people. He is a very popular host, MC, announcer on the WTA tour, ATP tour, the Legends events. He's done so much in his career. But Andrew Krasny, without further ado, I want to bring him in. But he's done so much. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, ladies. What's going
And he's
on?
cute as a button.
And he is super cute and looks so smart with those glasses on. So I'm excited. I'm so glad, Andrew, you could join us today.
Well,
We're really looking forward to chatting with you.
thanks for having me on. I've spent a lot of money on these teeth, so I like to flash them to you. But listen, I heard you up in the show. I'm going to be funny today. I'm going to give you all sorts of information. Hopefully, I'll make you guys smile. There's a major part of my heart that's with Ahmaud Arbery's family and George Floyd. That's where my heart is right now. But I'm going to make time to share the rest of my heart with the two of you and hope that we can get through all of this together. And I'm just putting a lot of love out there.
That's exactly well said. And we appreciate you. We appreciate your energy. And it's certainly helping a lot of people who, need a little bit of that right now. So without further ado, I want to jump right in, because one of the things we like to do, Andrew, is we like to take questions from our viewers as well, from our followers. We kind of let the chats go where they go, meander, if you will. But we also like to take a few questions. And I'm actually going to start out right out of the gate with a question, because when we posted that you were going to join us, we had the quickest response out of all of our chats. Like within an hour, people were sending in questions. And so this should be a lot of fun. But our first question from Patrick Cloacy, and he has the question that I was kind of wondering, just looking at your career. You started out as a writer for the late great Joan Rivers. And when I read this, I was like, okay, what? How did that happen? What was that like, starting out and being among that type of personality and celebrity?
Well, Chanda and Zena, listen, I didn't even know that I was a writer for her. That I was so young. I was in college and grew up with Melissa, and my friend's father produced The Tonight Show when I was in college. Her husband, Edgar, asked me to come and work on her new show that she had just gotten when she left The Tonight Show and went to Fox. And I'm 21, 22 years old, still in school, and my responsibility was to open up Joan's fan mail, read it. Okay, so she made a commitment early in her career that she was going to answer every fan that wrote her. Well, she never knew that her career would explode the way it did. So obviously she couldn't read every letter that she got. But this is before computers. We still had typewriters. I would open up the fan mail. If they asked for an autographed photo, they got a photo from her. But if they wrote something poignant, or that a family member was sick, or someone was going through a divorce and they needed Joan's advice or something, I would write the letter as if I was Joan, put it on her stationery, and leave it at her bed table every night. and she would read it and sign them.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
After hundreds and thousands of doing those through that year, it became very evident to her that I guess I didn't even know it back then, but I was able to jump into her head to write a letter as if I was her. And then she thought that, well, that means you must be able to write some jokes for me. And so that was the beginning of a very young and early relationship that grew to mature to her becoming like another mom to me. But yeah, I ended up writing for her on and off for close to 25 years.
Wow.
Well, I can definitely see you writing for her. She was actually one of my favorites. I used to love to watch her. But one other thing that I read in your bio, you also were like the hype person for different shows. That is something I always wanted to do, but I never felt I had the energy. How did you keep the energy up?
So I was working on a talk show with Lisa Gibbons, and I was the producer. And Chanda will tell you this, I'm an emotional guy. I'm very sensitive. So I got all the shows that had to do with cancer survivors or various, missing children, and I was a wreck. I was very upset. I took a lot of my shows home with me, and I don't know, I think I was out to dinner one night with Joan Rivers on a separate, I wasn't working for her at that moment. And she said, you need to be making people laugh. What can we do? And I was watching our audience warm-up guy warm up the audience. And this is how I've gotten, it's kind of a pattern in my life, how I've gotten a bunch of jobs. I watch people, so you better watch out, Chanda.
Oh, you're coming. I already know.
I'm after you. I watch people, and I feel like if I can do their job as good as they are, or I can do it better than them, I'm going to give it a try. And I was watching this warm-up guy. I was in my 20s and thought, I want to give that a shot. And I went up to Lisa Gibbons and I said, Lisa, give me a shot. I think I can be it. I think I can be your warm-up guy. And I'll bet you my whole first year's salary that I'll be able to do it. And she called my bluff, gave me a break. And then a month later, on her show live, she pulled me up on the show, on the stage, and said, the job is yours. You're my new warm-up guy. And that was the beginning of my warm-up.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is
the biggest
fantastic.
thing is, the biggest thing is you weren't afraid to take that shot and take a chance on yourself. I would be sitting back in the corner somewhere saying, I think I can do it.
No, listen, no one, we've been watching too many Publishers Clearinghouse commercials. No one's going to knock on your door with $10 million.
No.
So, you know what I mean? If you don't know yourself and figure out how to find that dream, then we're going to get stuck in a rut. And I'm a poster child for someone who can, go after what you want to do and make it happen, and don't say no unless they get a restraining order on.
Well, I kind of feel, Andrew, broadcasting and just, going into television the way I have from playing, it's kind of like that, because you don't get taught how to do these different roles. I mean, there's so many different, ways. You can either be a commentator, you can, do on court, announcing, you do your, interviews after matches, the actual, journalists doing interviews. And there's so many different ways that you can be in television within the sport, but there's no manual, and nobody says, okay, let's train you for this, and then we're going to put you in this job. You literally just have to, on the fly, sometimes when you're asked or when there's an opening, say, okay, yeah, I can do it, and just jump right in. So that's been one of the things.
Yeah, you have to want to be a salesman, because at the end of the day, we're all selling something, whether I'm selling pharmaceuticals, whether I'm selling vacuum cleaners, or I'm selling medical devices, or if I'm selling a sport that I love. We have to be able to jump into that specific chair and figure out the best way to sell it. And, the two of you were professional players. I was never a professional player. So I had to figure out a way to get into the sport and represent the fan, because I don't know what it's like to compete on the level that the two of you have, for sure. So I had to figure out a way to get myself through that door.
Well, speaking of that, how did you transition into tennis from how you started, Hollywood? How did that translate into tennis? So
the true story is that I got really addicted to tennis and playing tennis when I was inching towards my 30s, and fell in love with the sport. And I think both of you were probably well into the tour. Zena might have wound down. Chanda, you were still playing. And I was at a tennis tournament at UCLA where Bob Kramer was the tournament director, and a friend of mine worked for Bob Kramer, and I watched this 80-year-old guy, God bless him, was introducing Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras, and I just looked down on the court and I thought to myself, I can do that. That's kind of, I'm a warm-up guy. I was hosting a dating show on the USA Network called Crush that we had just done 65 episodes, and I knew in my gut that we weren't going to get picked up. And I asked my friend John if he could ask Bob Kramer if I could just work on the side court next year and volunteer. And I told Joan the story. She gave me a week off with pay.
What?
And I swear to God that to get free clothes that said Mercedes-Benz Cup or free Adidas or free California Pizza Kitchen, to get paid by Joan and to be able to be near Marat Safin and Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi and Mark Philippoussis, I thought I was the coolest guy in the world. And I swear it could have ended right there and I would have been happy. But it turned into, I never can do anything half-assed. And I was so dedicated to making it work that it turned into, I won't go into the whole detail, but it turned into a lifetime and a full-time career.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you've said it twice. I can't do that. You both said, so there's your movie, and there is your book, and there's your new game show. I can't do that. Nothing's on the limits.
You got to know your strengths. You got to know what the universe has given you. You have to be honest with yourself. I mean, I know that I could never be a professional tennis player. I know that I can't be a singer, but I do know that I love to be in front of people. I love to make people comfortable. I love to make people happy. I love to change someone's day. And if I can figure out a way to turn that into work, then
that's a bonus. Yeah.
Bonus.
Well, so we have Susan at First Break Academy who's asking, Andrew, what advice would you give a 21-year-old who's starting out in broadcasting?
Well, they first of all have to, they can't be lazy. I'm finding out now that working with so many kids that they don't understand the value of their voice. They don't understand the value of their vocabulary. They don't understand. You have to treat every job that you do as if you're going out to be Pavarotti or Barbara Streisand or any of the masters or Elton John, that you, Lady Gaga, all of these people have perfected their craft. And our craft in journalism and broadcasting has to receive the same attention. We can't say and like and and have a groggly voice or a high-pitched voice. You have to learn how to take yourself and turn it into an instrument of communication. And if you can do that and be honest about it and not be afraid of criticism. You know, Joan Rivers told me when I was 25 years old, we were in the back of a limousine, and she said, if you don't go to a voice coach, you'll never work in television.
Oh, wow. Really?
And she paid for it. And I'll tell you something. I say that to people now and they look at me like, no, it's different now. You don't know, Andrew. You don't know. And if I said that to Joan, she would have kicked me out of the car going 40 miles an hour.
I need a voice coach. What happened to, I didn't even know this existed.
You don't,
what?
No, you don't, it didn't, you don't know it exists. Chanda, you don't know because you have a great voice. It's people who don't have a good voice.
It's like me, Chanda. I was told I couldn't work on television.
That's not true.
No, I seriously was told. I won't say who told me, but it was a sports network, and they said that my voice, the monotone, I was too, so.
No, you have a great voice. Whoever told you that, hold on. Zena, give me their number right now.
No, you might actually have their number, so I won't.
I love that. And I love your story, Andrew, because I really believe this as well. You know, you are trying to get started and people think, okay, you're going to get this awesome first job and you're just going to be hitting it right from the start. And in reality, you know, all of these people we see who are successful, who are doing things on a high level and loving it, and it looks so fantastic. They've actually had to start small and build, and in some cases, you know, working in the dungeons, in back rooms where hardly anybody's listening. I mean, I've had to do, sort of ITV and internet type stuff where you might have had 4 or 5 people online, but you still have to treat it the same way you would a network broadcast, because you don't know who could be listening.
No, you're right. I go out to a stadium, and if Svetlana Kuznetsova is playing, I don't know, if let's say Svetlana's playing Joe Conta, right? Not 2 huge stars, and there's 80 people in the stadium that morning. I got to go out to that stadium and treat that stadium the way I would if there were 16,000 people in there.
Yeah.
And another thing that I notice is that people are so afraid of their ego and so or their self-esteem or that they're doing something beneath them. I was at a tournament, I'm not going to say where in case he watches this, but I was at a tournament where I love helping out. If it rains, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to dry the court. If Adam Barrett in Miami wants a cup of coffee, I'm going to stop by Starbucks on my way to work. I really don't care, right?
Yeah.
And I usually carry the player's bag off the court. If, say, Sloane Stephens goes to the Tennis Channel desk, I don't want her to carry her bag. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it off court. I'll drop it off at the clubhouse. So I needed a little help. And someone who worked at the tournament, I said, can you grab Sloane's tennis bag? I have Madison's or something like that. And he looked at me. He's like, that's not my job. And you guys, I lost it. I threw him under the bus faster than they could put gas in that tank. I went to the boss and I said, we cannot have anybody on our team who's not willing to hold a microphone or hold a tennis bag or hold a cup of coffee. I don't care what we're doing. We're all on the same team. And the next day he came and apologized to me. But it's like these kids don't realize that we're all in this together. And if anything's beneath you, then you can get off my boat. I don't want you on my boat.
Yeah, well, Andrew, that's very interesting what you said, because especially what has happened in 2020 this year and all these graduates, what you're saying to those people that are coming out is valuable information that they can have for a lifetime. And that really is the difference of going beyond and beyond being the best that you can possibly be. My mom used to always tell me all the time, I don't care if you're a housekeeper, I don't care if you're, a lawyer or whatever, be the best that you can be. And I think kids have lost that a little bit.
Yeah.
And, so kudos to you on that one.
Well, it's this instant gratification, right? They can turn on their video games and they can win around with doing minimal work with their fingers, or they watch these TV shows and don't realize that the characters are just made up, right? They don't show the struggles that the characters have had. And if I could talk to kids who can't go to their graduation, listen, life is the most precious, beautiful thing that we'll ever have, right? But sometimes it sucks. And it's those moments where life sucks that are going to make the good moments that much better. And you didn't go to graduation. We feel you. It sucks. But guess what? You're going to go to another graduation one day, or you're going to fall in love, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids. Great things are going to happen in your life. Do not let one moment define you or get you down, because life is pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of incredible, now, Andrew, you're dropping these names, top players, carrying her bag. I'm on the court with this. Okay, so we have a question from Brothers on Tennis, who they are wondering, what's your most memorable on-court interview and why was it so memorable?
Wow. Well, God, there's so many that run through my mind. I think there's 2 moments in my career that I think really reminded me or validated that there's a reason why I'm doing what I do. And I think it was the last interview. Chanda, you'll have to keep me honest on this. It was the last interview, Zina, you as well, the last interview that Kim Clijsters did in her career. And I'm in love with Kim, just for so many reasons, right? The fact that she would, early in my career, if she recognized that I was there from across the stadium during a warm-up, she would throw her racket down and run up 4 flights of stairs to give me a hug. I had her last interview at the US Open. She was playing mixed doubles with one of the Bryan brothers. And it hit me inside my head that it was her last interview, and just tears started rolling down my face during the interview. And that's the moment I think that really made me realize that I should be right where I was standing. And there's very few moments in our life that we can be somewhere and honestly say that there's nowhere else in the world that we would rather be than right there in that moment. And that was one of those moments.
Well, speaking of that, and Kim actually had a very similar thing. I was actually in a Burberry store in London, and I didn't really think she knew who I was. And so she came up, she's like, "Hi, Zena." I was like, "Oh." And so as went on, and I would actually see her, she's definitely one of the nicest girls. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you as well, what was some of the funniest moments like that you got from a player, like interviewing them, that you were like, okay, I can't say that I can't do that, but this is hilarious.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I'm like, I probably have multiple personality disorder. So behind the scenes,
which personality are we getting now, by the way?
Okay. No, I'm on my best behavior. But behind the scenes, I'm very inappropriate. I make horrendous jokes. And I will say that when I'm out on the court, or when I'm on air and I'm doing court report at Tennis Channel or wherever I am working, I'm very professional. So you won't really get the funny stories unless you get me drunk and we're not on camera. But I will tell you, the funny moments I think that have happened, if I was so young and new in my career that I introduced Novak Djokovic one day instead of Serbia, I said Belgium, and he stopped the warm up and literally hit me with the tennis ball. He said Fed Cup instead of Davis Cup for Tim Henman. I called Pam Shriver, Maria Shriver. I mean, don't get me started.
Oh, goodness.
Actually, I think I heard that one.
We were in Carson, California, and I called. But I will tell you, the most embarrassing thing that ever happened in my career, my nephew Brennan is a troublemaker. You wonder where he gets it from. And he downloaded onto my phone, without my knowledge, a special ringtone. So when he called me, that I would know that it was him. Okay, you following me?
Yeah.
Special.
Okay, so flash to 2006, 2007. He was probably 14, 15 years old. I'm driving a Porsche Cayenne because I think I'm all bad, and a tennis tournament at Amelia Island. And I drive through the loop of the driveway, and there is Nadia Petrova and her late mother, may she rest in peace, but at the time, Nadia is standing there with her mother. And Nadia looks at me and says, "Hey, can we get a ride up to the hotel?" And I'm like, yeah, it's Nadia Petrova. She was number 2 in the world, you guys, right? So she hops in the car. She's in the front seat. Her mom's in the back seat. And we're just pulling out of the driveway. And my backpack, I thought I was going to be by myself. My backpack's in the back of the car. And the ringtone that my nephew put on the phone when he called me was pornography. So, okay, so you hear this, "Oh, baby, yeah, oh, baby, oh my God, give it to me, baby." And you guys, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do?
You can't run. You're in your Cayenne. You're in your Porsche.
I don't know. Turn the radio up. I don't know.
I just looked at Nadia, and Nadia looked at me, and her eyes welled up in tears of embarrassment, and she just burst out laughing, and then it stopped, and I was like, "Oh my God, thank God!" And then it started up again.
Oh, no.
Back to back.
Oh my goodness.
So the story is keep your eye on your phone, and that was before you had passwords in the phone, and
that
story is priceless. That's a good one.
And it's true.
Well, so talking about sort of mishaps and mistakes and embarrassing moments. I mean, when you are on court, you're doing these interviews, you're announcing, emceeing. I mean, Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, Serena Williams. I mean, players, Djokovic. When you make a mistake, when you are live and in the middle of it, how do you handle it? What's your thought process? How do you get through those moments?
Well, I've gotten really lucky, and I can tell you that I'm on the average, and I'm going to knock on wood, I'm usually at about one good mistake a year. So I can't say that I'm the expert. I'm such a OCD overachiever that I try my hardest to keep it real, right? But I would say you just got to roll along and move with it. And luckily, they haven't been too catastrophic. I think one year, if you remember at the Miami Open, there would be a big grid up on the wall, and if it was 2 a.m. and we were ready to go home, you would check the grid and see who's playing who. And I was on the court, and I asked somebody, I think it might have been Sonia Mears, or no, it was Ana Ivanovic, and I think I said to her, so you're playing your doubles opponent in the next round. How hard is that? And she just looked at me, and this was on live TV. She says, yeah, I'm not playing doubles with her. And immediately on my phone, so I get a text from Serena. That was classic, Andrew. How are you going to get out of that one? Lindsay Davenport is like, LOL. I'm like, wait a minute. Where are you guys when I do something right? And now all of you are seeing when I make a mistake on national television.
But leave it to Lindsay and Serena to call you on it.
I get busted all the time. So what I was doing, I was looking at the grid, and it was, she plays either this person or that person, and I thought it was a doubles team.
Oh.
So yeah. You know what I'm talking about too. You've seen those grids.
Yes, very much so. And I mean, it happens, you know. So I guess one of mine that it's probably most memorable because it just happened. I was in Australia interviewing Caroline Wozniacki after her loss, sort of her retirement, you know, the whole retirement little ceremony on court. You know, they had the video from all the players, you know, I had to ask her some questions and all of that. And one of my first questions was asking her about, you know, winning the Australian Open, her, you know, one Grand Slam in 2000. I said in 2008 instead of 2018.
Oh, God.
And after I finished the question, she looks at me and goes, I think it was 2018. I was like, yeah, of course. That's what I meant. Just checking to see if you remembered.
That's the wrong person to make a mistake with, because she will bust you.
She was but she was really nice about it. And it was a tough moment, but I think it also helped to lighten the moment, you know, because she was thinking of this being her last match and her retirement and the tears, her family was all there. So it actually kind of was good for a little laugh, but yeah, you kind of have to go with it sometimes, and shit happens.
You know, we all make mistakes. It's how fast you get out of them. I was at the U.S. Open this last year, and I said, oh God, you guys, I'm getting old, but I literally said, I might as well have said Chana Rubin when the players walked out. I said the wrong player's name, and she had headsets on, so she didn't hear me, but I think it might have been, it was either Andrea Pekovic or somebody walked out to the wrong name. We had the wrong order, and it just happens, you know.
Yeah.
We make mistakes.
I mean, probably the fans would have gotten like more upset or notice it more probably than even the players, you know, at that point. Right. But you know, you keep it moving, and you know, it's just you're thinking of a lot of things sometimes too, and just kind of.
Well, that's why you gotta trust yourself. I don't know about you, but if I get nervous or something enters my peripheral, I'll make a mistake. So I don't really. I just have to look at it on a piece of paper and have it on a piece of paper, and you're reading it, and you know it's right there. You're nervous, you got to read off the paper. I think I introduced Ana Ivanovic walked out, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jelena Jankovic.
Oh, okay.
Ana Ivanovic. If I did it the other way around, I would have gotten in a lot of trouble.
That would not have been nice. And the facial expressions you probably would have gotten would be too much.
We're human. What I always wish is that if I do make a mistake, that the player who I make the mistake about wins the match. So they can't go into the press room afterwards and say, yeah, if Andrew didn't screw that up at the beginning, I would have won. So that hasn't happened yet.
Oh my gosh.
You know, a player's always looking to blame somebody. So, you know, whoever they see first, that's where it's going to go. But one thing I love about you, Andrew, is what I've noticed is when the player does see you, you know, walk out to you, they all have a smile on your face. So, you know, and being a former professional tennis player, that's not always the easiest thing. So obviously a very good rapport with the players.
Are you sure? Are you sure it's not gas? Are you sure it's a smile?
Whatever it is, it's working. You know what it is, Andrew? It's those beautiful teeth you paid for.
Beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Well worth whatever.
I got my teeth from a cadaver.
Well, so Andrew, I want to get this question in kind of because time just goes and we're having these little chats, when you're having fun, it just seems to fly by before you even realize it. But we're seeing a lot of events now, live events in all sorts of different places all over the world. Obviously, having to play with some adjustments with social distancing still, primarily without fans for all of these events thus far. I think it's something players are getting used to and willing maybe to make whatever adjustments are necessary because they're so ready to get back out and play. But the fans are kind of have been an important part of tennis and professional tennis in particular, the atmosphere they create. Based with your experience, based on kind of what you see of all of these different tournaments week in and week out being on site, how do you see things going forward, maybe through the end of the year? And even for fans, how do you see fans being able to engage still, if at all, during these difficult times?
Well, I think that we're all trying to, we're all staying relevant, right? We're trying to continue to work and articulate. And I think that there's so many ands, ifs, or buts. We just don't know what's going to happen, right? And I think, first of all, we're experimenting, right? We're going to be in Charleston in a few weeks, and we're going to see what tennis can be like on a little bit larger level than what we were doing with UTR a couple weeks ago, right? Or just last week with the women. So we'll see what happens with this caliber of talent that we're going to have in Charleston, right? You've got 4 Grand Slam champions who are going to be there. Victoria Azarenka, Sonia Kenin. Who else is going to be there, Chan, to help me?
Sloan, I
and
think.
Bianca Andreescu.
Yeah, Andreescu, Sophia Kenin, Victoria Azarenka, right?
Yeah.
Am I missing?
Sloan's playing it.
Sloan, Madison. They've got a great group.
Right. So what's life going to be like with them playing without fans? They're not going to love it, but I think everyone's going to suck it up and realize that we've got to do this until it can be safer again. What do we do to engage fans is going to be the big question. Well, we have to make sure that people like Tennis Channel and ESPN can get the feed and get the coverage and present it to our fans at home. But at the same time, we still need to figure out a way to incorporate fans. And I'm not officially speaking on anyone's behalf yet. And the tournaments that I consult with and work on year round, we have not entered those discussions yet. But in my opinion, I will say that we need to figure out how are we going to include them with content. Are we going to provide more social media? Are we going to, because we're going to have access to the players at the tournaments, do we up our game and provide more content so fans can feel involved? Are we, we talked about this yesterday. Are you watching American Idol? When you see what's happening with American Idol, they've lost their studio audience, right? Yeah. So they sent ring cameras and ring lights and sophisticated equipment to the homes of their families and their fans. So they incorporated them into the show. So I think that we need to look at that in the interim in tennis and start feeling like, well, maybe we find a family that loves watching Rafa play, that will wear the Rafa gear and root and cheer him on. And then we're at Tennis Channel and we can check in with that family and things like that. But we have to start figuring out how can we activate what we've committed to with our sponsors and keep our sponsors when we have an empty stadium. So I think we're going to learn a lot about technology. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves and how creative we can get while we are all in the trenches right now, trying to bring back some sort of a semblance of tennis.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points because I think that's going to be the challenge going forward. Obviously the players rely on that atmosphere that's created by the fans, by, people in seats, cheering and the support and all that. And that's a bit of an intangible, but first and foremost, we want to also be able to give the fans, those experiences as well. So it'll be interesting. Now we have another question from Susan, who's asking about the US Open. And, she wants to know, can you tell them something about announcing at the US Open that fans might not know that happens behind the scenes?
Well, the US Open is kind of an interesting beast on its own, right? You've got on my team that Michael Feuer is the head of our team, the creative, talented Michael Feuer. I'm sure you guys might know Michael. You've got the way it trickles down, the U.S. Open, you've got Andy Taylor, who's the voice of God, probably the best in the business. He's up in a big booth on Arthur Ashe, right? And then I won't go out on Arthur Ashe because it's usually contracted with ESPN that the post-match interviews will be through ESPN, and I work at Tennis Channel and for USTA at the U.S. Open. Mm-hmm. Then you get out to Louis Armstrong, which is my court, and that's where I get to do my magic. And I have to have no ego there as well, because they could move, say, Stan Wawrinka out to court 2, and it could be the best match of the night. And I'm ready to go out there and interview him. I've got everything planned. And then Pam Shriver comes over and knocks me over with her purse, and she does the post-match interview because ESPN's going to get it. So I have to remind myself, I'm still getting paid. I still love my job. I'm still getting paid to watch tennis. Whatever happens, happens. So at the U.S. Open, it's very last minute, very different, but it is a really tight ship, and we all work together to put out the best product that's possible. And there's nothing like a Grand Slam. I haven't worked at all of them. I've actually only worked at U.S. Open. I've been to Wimbledon. I've never been to French. Never been to the Australian.
Yeah. Well, you think about the U.S. Open. I mean, they historically have so many stars that come out. And that's always kind of a huge thing. And even sort of behind the scenes, okay, where are they going to be sitting? Whose box are the stars going to be in? Even, with the president's suite, okay, who's going to be in there tonight? And have you had to coordinate with any of that? Has that affected at any point sort of how you do what you do on court? Well, and I've got a little birdie over here. So I'm gonna say, little birdie. Give me.
You ship that birdie out to me. I'm looking for a birdie.
When we finish, I'm gonna give you a treat. Okay.
It's a cute little birdie, though.
Like 15 minutes.
Listen how she talks to her husband.
I'm gonna give you a treat.
What comes to mind? I'm not sure if I'm answering your question the best, but what comes to mind is that Kobe Bryant was out at Louis Armstrong last summer watching, I think it was
Osaka.
She was watching. He was watching Naomi Osaka, and I think he came out to watch Coco Gauff as well.
Right. Okay.
And how special those moments are when you find out the celebrities. I love when celebrities come out to watch tennis. I just had Sugar Ray Leonard on this new show that I'm hosting in the Tennis One app, and when I can meet people who are outside of my peripheral, outside of my because all I know is tennis basically for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I can meet Gladys Knight, or I can meet Sugar Ray, or Dr. Phil, or the guy who's the guy who was playing Mr. Big on Sex and the City. You know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yes. Yep. I forget his name.
Big. I just call him Big.
Yes. Right? I love him.
I'll think I'm in my 50s, and you're gonna have to edit this out because I look like a complete idiot. But I got to play tennis with him last year at Gladys Knight's birthday party. There's things that happen in our business.
Gladys Knight's birthday party. I mean, how awesome is that?
Oh my God!
I would just die. You notice he's dropping those names.
No,
I mean, like it's nothing, and he just goes by it, No, you're not gonna just go by that.
I swear, when Gladys invited me to the birthday party, I thought she may have mistakenly sent a message to Andy Roddick or to all the other Andrews in the world. But it's those moments that I really do. I never go to sleep without realizing that I am so blessed and so lucky to do what I do. And we can't take any of this for granted. It's the year we're born and the year we die are the years that are on our tombstone, right? Yeah. But it's that little dash in between those two dates that you got to embrace and make every single moment of that little dash the best that you can. And I try my hardest not to forget that. I went on 5-6 years ago. I went on a diet, like the keto diet, and I lost 20 pounds, which I needed to do. And then a year later, I went on a drama diet. I got rid of all the drama out of my life. Oh my God, you guys, it was more effective than the keto diet. The drama diet, getting people out of your life who don't want to see you succeed, who don't want to see you happy. I don't have time for that. If I'm in a swimming pool, right? If I'm in a swimming pool, don't throw me a brick. I don't want to.
I've been on that diet for a while. Chanda, no, I'm the big introvert over here. I'm like, I don't have time for all your stuff that's going on with y'all people.
Yeah.
But the good thing about it is you really exude the positiveness, and that's what I think when I asked that question about what it players when they see you smile. But that's what it is, just the positive. You're just such a positive, and you have a great aura. So we all see it. Joan Rivers saw it before we even thought about seeing it, and we're just really happy that you're in our sport, because sometimes I think my sport gets a little boring. Chanda knows I'm always texting her when she's on air. She's like, Zena, but I love people like you that bring humor. So hopefully you'll have a show where you can bring some humor to when we're sitting home. So
I'm trying to. And that glow that you're seeing, Zena, is my ring light hitting my really cheap hair dye. Don't be fooled.
I thought it was
they're the lights of heaven.
No, you guys. After 5 weeks of quarantining, I started looking like Don King. So I went and I got hair dye and I did it myself. And now my bathroom looks like SVU.
Well, I did my braids. Andrew, I did my braids. It took me 2 days, but I did my braids myself.
No, it looks great. You're more talented than me. My bathroom looks like you need a hazmat to come in there. We got to paint it.
SVU is like one of my favorite shows, so I don't see a problem with that. But okay, I guess it's not good for your bathroom.
Jenna, the first, 58 minutes of SVU is good, but the first 2 minutes is ugly. That's when they stumble upon the body.
Good point. Well, we're all like learning some new skills during probably the last 2 to 3 months. So, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you did mention the show that you're doing on the Tennis One app. So tell us a little bit about that. I've seen, a few of the guests you've had on. It looks like a really cool show. Tell us how it came about and sort of how that's been going.
So thanks for asking. The Tennis One app, there's a company called Bleacher that makes apps for tennis tournaments. They worked with Miami Open. They worked up in Charleston. I think they do something over in Europe. And I had heard about them, but I think I had seen that someone was being interviewed. I think Shelby Rogers was in their app doing something. And I opened up this app, took a look at it. What's happened is they don't know when tennis is coming back. So they can't service any of their clients who they make apps for. So they decided in the interim of COVID-19 is they created an app to drive people who love tennis. So it's just a little app that's about this big on your iPhone, right? But inside that app is content. And I was looking for a home where I could take a little bit of a show to, and they were looking for someone who had a bit of a sense of humor, who's had a lot of plastic surgery, who could come on their show and maybe talk to some celebrities. And I had no idea that anyone was going to say yes to me. Because, I don't know about you guys. I don't like asking for favors. I didn't know if, I sent Andy Roddick a text, and he literally texted me back and said no and lose my phone number.
Okay, so, he stole his invite to the Gladys Knight party, so of course.
Exactly. It took him 24 hours to come back to me and say he was only kidding. James Blake said no. And I said, James, come on. I got some naked pictures of you. I need you to authenticate them. I don't know if it's you or who it is. And, but everyone's been saying yes. We had a special, you can download the app for free, and it's in my bio on Instagram. But I had a great interview with Venus Williams that dropped today. James Blake, I interviewed yesterday. I have a co-host, I'm Rachel Stuhlman, and I struggled, you guys. I'm going to be honest with you and keep it real. The whole night before I interviewed James, I just what do I do? Can I talk about George Floyd? Can I talk about what happened with Christian Cooper in Central Park, which is just blocks away from games in New York? And I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't. But at the same time, I had to ask James if I could go there. So I sent him a text message. And, part of being a journalist, I use that word loosely because I'm not really a journalist, but being a host, we have to know how to weave in the happiness and the sadness and have the blessing of who we're interviewing before we bring up topics. And it turned out, I'm getting emotional talking about it right now with you guys, that it just turned out to be such a moving few minutes with James. We can't remain numb to this. a few years ago, I was in Memphis and I went to the Civil Rights Museum and I was wrecked. It took me 2 days to even have a conversation with anybody, let alone talk about what I experienced in that museum. Have you been there, either of you?
Wow. Haven't been.
I've been there. Yeah.
I mean, Chanda, it's
just, it's hard. And certainly for me, speaking from my perspective, I mean, the thoughts, the ideas that when you see the stories of what people actually went through, it just hits so hard. It's tough.
No.
But we've got to tell the stories. We've got to be brave enough to hear the stories and try to keep creating some change. So that's, I mean, I love that you are embracing, the platform to do that.
And I really appreciate you, bringing it up, because sometimes as a person of color and someone that's non-color, sometimes we want you guys to, I don't want to say help, but at least talk about it, because sometimes people make it seem like it's just people of color and it's their problem, but it's all of our problem. And, especially what's going on right now with the guy from Houston, it's really touching us because it's on the news all the time. And the interesting thing about it is, before I even knew that the guy was from Houston, I was like, I know that guy's face, because I had seen him a couple of times possibly play basketball right at the tennis courts that we grew up in. So it's kind of weird,
So was it George Floyd that lived in Houston and then he moved to Minneapolis?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are our neighbors. These are people that we can't be silent. And I thought to myself, I'm going there with James. And if the company that I'm working for wants to fire me, I'll take it in about 2 seconds, man. It's we got to talk about it. We can't be numb. We've got to make a change. And
takes some bravery at times, but absolutely. I mean, and the time is now. We're seeing it left and right. And so, while we're trying to, still bring some lightheartedness and still bring some enjoyment, we've also got to be strong enough to embrace, these moments that require it. So hopefully we can keep moving forward. I mean,
we're going to. We got to remember to smile. We got to soldier through it. We got to teach the next generation that complacency is not the way to go, and we can't remain numb, and we've got to make a change. And my commitment now is, before you get on Facebook and you bitch about having to wear a mask, or bitch about that you got to have hamburger helper instead of a steak at your favorite restaurant, or you're mad that you're busting out of your jeans because you can't exercise, just before you bitch about anything, why don't you think about George Floyd? And think about Ahmaud Arbery, and think about Christian Cooper, who was just bird watching at Central Park. Think about them before you.
Breonna Taylor in her home.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the idea is it's overwhelming to even think about it. But yeah.
Well, and I don't know about you guys, but it's funny today. I don't know if you saw Chris Everett's on Twitter today, and she was basically saying, this has got to stop and all of that. Well, the interesting part for me is, I'm not a big Twitter person and whatever. And I actually, took up for Chrissy, because this one lady got on there and said, you don't know the whole story or whatever. I'm like, lady, what whole story do you need to know? You're sitting there watching it. I mean, we see video. It's like, come on, have a conscience. So
the fact of it is, these people are trying to say, well, he passed a bad check or what have you. But you know what? That doesn't mean you pay with your life. And I don't care what he did, right? The fact of it is that if a white guy walked in there and stole a candy bar and paid with a bad check, he'd be sitting at home right now watching cartoons. And that's the fact. And
it's true. And I think, as people of color, I think we've all had some of these moments, but we're still here. We're still here to talk about it. We're still here, to have conversations, and a lot of people aren't. And so we've got to remember, I mean, that is just beyond what should be happening. So yeah, no question about it for me.
We got to vote in November. And we got to vote our way to a better life. That's the only thing, other than making phone calls right now and calling your senators and your congressmen and congresswomen. And we have to vote in November. We need a change. And
Look, Andrew, run to vote. Okay, we don't need to stop. We need to be running as fast as we can get there.
No, exactly, right. We got to vote, and vote any way that we can.
Absolutely. And so, I've loved this conversation. We're getting to our last few minutes. So kind of our last little mini question, and, all of us, we can kind of chime in, but one question that a number of our viewers have had is about on-court coaching. And, Andrew, sometimes you're kind of like up close and a little more personal with it, right? I've experienced it towards the end of my career. Zena, they did not allow on-court coaching when you were playing, but you,
and I'm glad, because it would have been a lot of cursing.
you watched it, and what are our thoughts on that? I could have given my thought. I don't like it. I think I would love to not have it be still part of the conversation. But what do you guys think about it?
Zena?
Well, I don't like it. And especially when I started coaching, I really didn't, the thought process didn't like it, because it doesn't give the player an opportunity to think for themselves. And now, I'm not also one of those coaches, or I don't like coaches where they're in your ear 24/7. And then when you get on the court, they're like, why didn't you do something? Do what? I'm sitting there, probably turned off half of the things you've said to me. So to put that person on the court, once again, it's like, but I'm also an egoist. I know that's not a word, but I don't have an ego. And it's like, I don't have to be on the court. I can be in the background, and it's just fine with me. I think sometimes some coaches also want to be, they're just as big as the player. You're not playing.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of on-court coaching. I understand 100% why we have it, is that we have so many more competitors for the attention span of our viewers now than we ever have, right? They can go to play video games. They can go to the mall. They can watch so many other sports on 98,000 other channels. We need to figure out a way to keep them engaged. So I get it, but it's just not working out. The fact that the ATP hasn't embraced it yet. The big question becomes is, what do we do about the subtle signals from off the court so we can prevent the incident like Carlos Ramos and Serena? What do we do when a coach from the side goes like this or goes like this? And can we give them soft warnings and stuff like that? I'm not a fan of on-court coaching.
Well, but off-court, I think that it actually should be, you should go ahead and let them give signs or whatever. People do it, and they've been doing it for years anyway. What's the big deal? But when and if your player and the coach has a couple of signs that they have gotten together and worked out, okay, the player still has to do it.
Right, exactly.
It's not that easy. People make it seem like the coach tells you something, and then you go out there and
it doesn't always happen.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen that way. And wasn't the US Open, weren't they going to allow that? Was that going to be happening this year from the stands? They were talking about that.
I think they should let it happen. And I also think that, on those tabs, if an umpire thinks that it's inappropriate, then go to your tab that you have next to you. You've got that big iPad that's helping you keep score. Why don't you hit that little red button on the bottom that sends a text message to Patrick Mouratoglou and says, dude, chill. You don't ridicule Serena Williams on the biggest stage of tennis without a soft warning. You don't even get me started on that. It was, I know.
Andrew, let's not, because I totally agree with you. I know exactly what you're saying. Absolutely, like that should happen,
right?
Not that way.
We see it all the time where I'll give you an example, and then I know you got to go. But we'll take Maria Chit-Chat. I've sat on the court 1,000 times where I've seen Maria look over to a coaching camp and just go, That's all. That's all Carlos had to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it was a perfect storm. Don't you remember what happened there?
Everything happened like the only way it could have happened for that to blow up the way it did.
Right. You remember what happened a couple of days before it? You had Mohamed Liani was coaching Nick Kyrgios. He got out.
That's right.
And then the other chair umpire got mad at someone for switching her, Elise Cornet, for switching her sports bra or something, taking a
her shirt, taking her shirt because it was backwards and putting it back on court.
So, and it's one thing, and the last thing I'll add to that that I didn't hear many people talk about, but it crossed my mind why he might have done it. I'm not accusing anybody, but we also have put gambling into it. Gambling is a situation. So the umpire sitting there controlling the situation, I put nothing past nobody. And so once again, I'm not blaming him. I'm
No,
just
right.
saying that these are some things that, to me also should have come out a little bit, because once you start putting gambling into sports, or it's on your phone and people can gamble on this person making a serve and do it, that's a whole nother thing.
Well, I will tell you, in Carlos Ramos's defense, he's a total pro. I think there was just a ton of pressure for him to shine after these mishaps were happening at the U.S. Open. I think he wanted to go by the book, and I don't know what it's like to be in his shoes or your shoes. I just think it was a really unfortunate situation, and I just want, before we go, I just want someone to win a match that's going to help us sell tickets for the tournament the next year. You know what I mean? It's not about who won that match and who lost it. It was an ugly day for a sport. Naomi and Serena are two incredible young ladies, and Naomi has blossomed. So, I mean, what did she become, right? When she took off to that interview, I was in tears.
Yeah, I mean, an incredible transformation, just, in terms of a player and seeing this person evolve. So, there was definitely some good that came out of it. And we kind of try to focus on that. Like you said, there's so much good in our sport. And, kind of a final thought, even during these tough times, tennis has kind of become a little bit of a beacon because of how it's played, because it provides opportunities to, still play while social distancing and still, give entertainment to fans. So, it's been fun to still be a part of a sport during this time that can provide that still. We've had a number of our viewers kind of talk about or ask about, what it's like not being able to play, for players, and, being out of the sport, not knowing when it's going to come back. And not only for players, but for all of those who are involved in the sport, who rely on it, who look forward to it. It's been tough.
Yeah, 5,000 people work at Wimbledon. They're all out of a job, right? There's thousands of people who put this sport together, but we're going to be back. We're going to be back soon. I'm staying optimistic. As sure as I am looking at two beautiful girls right now, I know we're going to be back, and we're going to be back soon.
Love it. I'm waiting for your show so you can keep me laughing, okay?
Yes, we're going to check it out on the Tennis One app for sure. Andrew, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It has been fantastic. We've had a blast, and we hope all of you have enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for following us, for sending in questions. We're going to say bye-bye for this episode of Game.Set.Chat. Continue to follow us, look for our next episodes, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.